Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking our look at Phoenix in 120. When Phoenix was first launched, I lamented that I was not included in the social media YouTube sphere for testing it out. This time around, Harman reached out to me, rectified that, and really super sweet people. They sent me 5 rolls to test out. This was 3 rolls of pre-production, so it had not the usual, like the actual like branding stuff with it, and then 2 boxes that were the actual shelf ready product. They did not give me any direction of what they wanted. They just wanted me to try it out and see what I thought. They didn't even ask me to do a video. This is just me wanting to talk about it. The film itself, when we shot Phoenix before, we did that in 35mm. We found it very grainy, very contrasty. Color was difficult to work with. And you might suspect that 120 is going to be the same, but surprisingly, it's not. It is the same emulsion batch. This is still version 1 from what I could gather in the conversation I had with Harman. So there haven't been any actual emulsion improvements, but changing from 35 to 120 has made some improvements, and it's not just in the size with grain as you would expect. I found the color to be better. I found the speed to be a little bit better. The contrast is still there, but it's more manageable. And then obviously grain is going to be minimized because it's just a bigger area of film space. So I went out and shot 2 rolls. I made the mistake of forgetting my light meter when I went and shot those 2 rolls. It was just a little family get together. It wasn't anything important. None of these rolls were important stuff. It was mostly just testing the film out. But those first 2 rolls, I used my phone app, and I gotta say, I don't trust it. Seeing the results, the phone app missed a lot of exposures, and they were very severely underexposed. I did get a couple of good shots, and particularly this one of my oldest son, which I think is, from the 2 rolls, the best shot. But it turned out pretty good. These were DSLR scanned using my Sony full frame A850, which is an older generation, but it still produces good DSLR scans. I shot it at 160 and just did standard C41 processing. So I've got my sous vide here, my little plastic bucket from a kitchen store, and then just bottles and just a Jobo tank inversion agitation. So of those 2, that's what I came up with. That was the best one. So DSLR scanned and then converted through Lightroom via Negative Lab Pro. And it came out pretty good. So I was able to control the contrast fairly well. I was able to get the color pretty good and the exposure really good. So I found it easier to work with in the conversion if you're going to go that step. So the next 2 rolls, I wanted to try something out. Shaka 1277, or however he calls his channel. And I have been doing some Discord discussion on Phoenix, and he said that he shot it rated a little bit lower and tried pulling it for some contrast control. With him being in Ireland and Great Britain and that general area, I would imagine his lighting situation is quite a bit different than mine. Here in central Kentucky, we have had non-stop clear, bright, sunny days throughout August. So no opportunity for me to have like low light situations. So I thought I would try pulling it as well. So the next 2 rolls, I went on a photo walk with a friend, and I shot it at 125, so overexposed a third stop, and then pulled it about 30 seconds of development. So normally development would be 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I did 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It did absolutely nothing to control contrast. What it did do was screw up the magenta green layer. So I have a lot of magenta in the shadows and midtones. But then if you correct the green, you're going to get a lot of green in your highlights and higher upper midtones. So was not a good idea for me. Those two rolls did not work out very well. We've got some examples here of what that looks like. And you can see that while I try to neutralize the highlights, I'm going to get a lot of magenta down in the shadows. So pulling, not a good idea for me, at least not in the bright sunny midday lighting that I was shooting in. So then I had one final roll, and that final roll, I took the camera with me on my morning walk through my neighborhood, which butts up against a farm. So I developed that normally, shot it again, rated at 160, but all of this was taken, well, the first half was taken just before sunrise. So we've got some really bright pre-sunrise sky towards the sun with lower shadows in the foliage. You can see how it's got like quite a bit of magenta fringing. Some of that is the fringing, I think, because of the light and the halation, and some of that is also because the rising sun is behind those trees. So moody and atmospheric for the time, but not super accurate. And then the second half of my walk was at sunrise. So we can see we've got quite a bit of warm, very strong side lighting. This barn, for example, appears red. That is the red rising sun shining off of the black paint of the barn. It gets more golden as I come back through that area. So this is the first shot, and then as I walked back, you'll see it's more golden, less red, and that's just the rising sun. But again, DSLR scanned, converted in Negative Lab Pro through Lightroom, and I can control the contrast pretty well. I can bring some of that down. The initial scan has blown out skies, and some of the shadows are fairly deep. The negative does have that information, so I just need to pull that back in post-processing, and it worked out pretty well. These are pretty good. Color's fairly good for the lighting, very cool in the shadows, or the shade, and very warm in that rising sun. So I feel like it did a pretty good job of handling the situation and the scanning process. When it comes to trying to RA4 print, I actually did. So this is the picture of my son that we looked at earlier, and printed RA4. It is very high contrast. His skin tone's a little bit darker because if I printed it lighter like the scan, then the highlights are completely blown out. They're still fairly blown out here, but not like completely pure blank white. It's got a little bit of green in it. And then the shadows are much, much deeper, starting to lose some detail. I believe, now I haven't tried it because there's a lot of effort for just a portrait like this, but I believe I could probably get a very similar result if I was willing to put in the work to make a contrast reduction mask. We've talked about contrast reduction masks before with black and white, and we used the ortholith film. In this case, because it's a color negative, I would have to use a panchromatic film like T-Max 100 is very good for it. And then you need to use a low contrast developer like One Shot, or some people claim to use very dilute HC110 in order to create a colorless negative, because you develop black and white to that low of a contrast, it tends to get very brown. and you need it to be colorless because that brown is going to influence your color printing. But overall, I think the print turned out pretty good. I think you can make good prints from this. Now, what I did with it is used a scrap piece of color negative film. This just has a blank image area. I used this on top of the negative carrier to make printing easier, as though the base had that orange tint, which obviously this film does not. So I did not attempt to make a print without that, because I had been printing recently, so I did have to tweak my filtration a little bit, but actually not too much from the last film that I printed, which was, what was it? What did I print last? Oh, I made the prints of the different temperatures of C41, and that was all shot on Portra 160. So I maybe changed 10 points of filtration on my magenta and yellow for this film from my Portra, and that's really the only correction that I needed to make. So I would definitely recommend, if you're going to try to print this in the darkroom, use some blank C41 on top of the negative for that. Speaking of which, you may have noticed that we had the black border around that print, and that was made using my 6x7 borderless negative carrier that you can get for the Saunders LPL or Jobo series enlargers. If you are looking for negative carriers, I've got a whole series of 35mm in a variety of medium format, bordered, borderless, and even with the sprocket holes of 35mm. So if you need such a thing, I've got them. They are available on my website, bluegrassphotographics.com, as well as other things, merchandise like these t-shirts and other designs. Or if you need a copy stand for DSLR scanning, you can get mine from there, tabletop version, clamp version, or both. So you can swap between the two based on your needs. Those sorts of things do help support this channel and keep us able to print, and hopefully one day we will be able to move all of this to the new darkroom once we get the plumbing situation worked out. When we do, we'll start making some videos on the construction of that darkroom space. We'll see how it goes. Winter's coming, and I don't know if we're going to be able to dig a trench for a pipe during that time, but we'll find out. All right, that's going to do it for this. This was just really a quick look at the 120 version of Phoenix. Thank you to Harman for sending that out to me. I do appreciate being included in this round. I'm looking forward to the next version. I don't know what the next version is going to entail. I'm not in the loop on that sort of thing. But if I had to guess, I would say we're going to have some emulsion improvements on that contrast, on maybe the speed, 200. I think getting a little closer to 200 would be good. And maybe on the die couplers so that we can have better color rendition. And then maybe version 3 we'll get that base. With the orange base to make scanning and printing a little bit easier. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm hoping that's how it goes. And what kind of time frame? I have no idea. No idea if this is going well for them, if it's slow progress. Hopefully soon, right? Maybe next year we might see version 2. Hopefully. So thank you for watching. Hope this helps if you are shopping for that film, or if you just wanted to see what the 120 is like. I like it. I think it's pretty good. It's going to have some challenges in the darkroom, but I think it scans much easier, and we'll be able to give you some good images with a fun film and help support a company that's trying to innovate and create something new, which never a bad idea in our field. We're losing so many films from Fuji. It's nice to have Harman trying to fill the gap. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.